Since the release of Destiny 2, I've sank so many hours into it. For the longest time, I've had this MMO itch that needed to be scratched hard, and Destiny 2 not only has scratched that, but it sank its talons in me. I'm completely addicted to this game and I've got no intention of stopping anytime soon. But among the many things Destiny 2 has done right, in which we'll get into briefly here, today I want to look at some of the stuff the game, in my opinion, has done either wrong or just fell short. So, my fellow Guardians, let's take a look at what went wrong with Destiny 2. There's a fine line to walk when looking at a sequel to any game. You can have a sequel or, well, it could be a prequel as well, that differs so much from its predecessor that it's almost unrecognizable. The Resident Evil games come to mind. That series has undergone numerous changes to how we play those games, shifting from a fixed third-person perspective to then a third-person view that follows the player, and then finally moving on to the first-person perspective. But then you can have sequels that don't change the formula from its previous titles. Games like Gears of War or Call of Duty have this formula and it doesn't really change through each iteration, yet we're still given a somewhat new experience, albeit in familiar territory. Destiny 2 falls into that latter category, so much so people are referring to Destiny 2 as Destiny 1.5, and honestly for good reason. And this mentality stemmed from the very first time Destiny 2 got announced, when Bungie were somewhat bragging about having new strikes and a new raid. And I sat there and thought, well, I'd have hoped so. I thought that was a given, but it goes further from there. The enemies of Destiny 2. At the moment in the game we have 4 races: Cabal, Fallen, Hive, Vex, and well, I guess there's a 5th, the Taken. Now I'm not so up to date on the lore of Destiny, but there is another race we've yet to meet, but I think that'll change soon. But moving back to the races, these races consist of numerous enemy types with a couple of additions to the enemy variation in Destiny 2, but that's kind of where my issue lies. Even though the races are broken into factions that each have their own identity and goals, we've been fighting these same enemies since Destiny 1. Shooting a Vex Goblin in Destiny 1 feels the same as shooting a Vex Goblin in Destiny 2, but maybe that's an odd comparison. Destiny 2 is walking that fine line of being too similar to its predecessor, especially when referring to the enemies. I'd have hoped for not only new races to battle against from the start, but additional enemies for the existing races as well. And as I mentioned earlier, I know each race has new types, for example the War Beasts, but I just wish there were more. And I think that's a testament to how good the gunplay is. Yes, it's not necessarily groundbreaking, but shooting enemies in Destiny 2 feels good and I don't really know why. Perhaps it's the fact that enemies react to being shot, especially the Vex, but additionally the fact enemies act as loot pinatas. It's just fun to shoot stuff, and that's a good thing because you do a lot, and I mean a lot of shooting in Destiny 2. So that's one of the reasons I want more enemies, because it'll mean new and more stuff I can shoot at, and I won't be shooting stuff I've been shooting years prior. In regards to the gunplay, I want to talk briefly about the weapons. There's only 2 new weapon types appearing in Destiny 2, and again it's the same argument as the enemies. I feel as though 2 new types is just not enough really. When you have this game based in a sci-fi universe, your options for weapon types is almost endless. Now, our argument is even in the existing weapon classes, a lot of them feel the same, and although I agree, I feel as though that's for good reason. Not every weapon has to be a unique snowflake, as I feel it diminishes the endgame or near endgame gear. There needs to be some bland, boring weapons to make the unique weapons feel, well, just that, unique. But strong, unique weapons need to know their place too. There's a reason the Mida multi-tool is the most popular in the Crucible, as it ticks the most boxes for an ideal weapon, with not many weapons that counter it. And I do know how ironic it is that the best PvP weapon in Destiny 2 is a weapon that originated from the first game. But moving back onto the weapon diversity, yes, there's many unique weapons in each weapon category, but again, we're in this expansive universe. I mean, having the ability to wield other races' weapons would have been welcomed. Again, what's there is good, but it needs more. Speaking of more, when the game launched, I made it my duty to go through the campaign on each of my characters. I have one of each class, and I managed to do that in about 2 days. And although the campaign is short, what's there is not too bad, honestly. Although I will say I was a little confused when we've gathered the 3 guardians, then all of a sudden we're off to retake the tower. I thought there could have been some middle stuff leading up to that. With that said, most of the campaign wasn't anything to scream about. After the first time I did it, for the second and third time I just zoned out and just did it to get to level 20. What I like is the fact there is more story stuff, better cutscenes, more backstory. The biggest gripe with the story and the cutscenes and whatnot was honestly the writing. Some parts were just so cliche with the lines such as, "We're not so different, you and I." But that's just a personal gripe. I've specialised in crappy cheesy writing, so I'm well acquainted with it. Just as before with the other topics, I just wanted more. The intro mission after you lose your light is great when you play through it the first time. When your ghost tells you they can't revive you, you actually get a real sense of tension when you encounter the war beasts for the first time. This illusion was broken though after I did die and I respawned. It kinda broke the tension, but what else were Bungie to do in that situation? Delete my character? No thanks. One thing I'd like to go over is there's all this talk about millions of players playing Destiny 2, yet I've been farming heroic public events to get exotics, and I bump into people very rarely, and I'm not sure if I'm part of a small minority here, but my public event experience has been the following. I'm either on my own doing the event, or there's about 6 or 7 of us doing the event, and if you're going for the heroic event, these things are quite hard to do on your own. Yet, if you're with 6 or 7 people, the events get completely trivialized. The issue is, all of these people are playing this game, yet sometimes the world feels completely dead. And this is confusing regarding the story as well. We're told numerous times during the campaign we're the only person with our light back. Then we find other players in the world, and this illusion gets broken. But for the sake of it being a multiplayer game, I think I'll let that one slide. The biggest issue I have is the public areas outside of the tower. They're either completely dead or they are full of life. There's no real middle ground. And if so, it's a rare sight. This isn't always online multiplayer game. And this might be me, but I like interacting with random folk I see in the world. It's a really cool experience when you're going to an event on your own and then all of a sudden a full fire team comes in out of nowhere and helps you kick some ass. But again, if there's more than say 5 guardians doing public events, it makes them really easy. So if that were to change, some scaling and balancing changes might have to be made. Now admittedly when it comes to the specifics such as loot distribution and or team fire being the focus in Crucible, I'm not too knowledgeable about those in particular, and just for transparency's sake, I started playing Destiny 1 somewhat hardcore around the Taken King expansion, so year 1 Destiny 1 stuff I have very little knowledge of. But this discussion is about Destiny 2, and I'm only really making references to Destiny 1 where I know I have knowledge to do so. But reference to teamfire, this is where in PvP, if you and another team member fire on one person, you will rapidly melt their health bar, making it impossible for them to react. And although this can be annoying as someone who is normally a solo player, I don't really coordinate with my team to focus fire. But in Destiny 2's defense, this game is begging you to play with other people. It's marketed as a co-op game, with the inclusion of guided games, which is a looking for group-like system. Bungie is giving you the tools to play and meet new people. This game is not meant to be played on your own. This is a team-based game, and plus playing with any game with friends always makes it more interesting anyway. So now we're going to go over to the endgame. Now by no means am I at endgame. As of writing this, the furthest I've got in the raid is Callus, and I've yet to down him, but hopefully I'll be able to do it tonight. So without endgame experience, I had to look elsewhere for opinions and try and formulate my own, but I can't really do that without actually getting to endgame. But Destiny 2 does lack endgame. After you hit the power cap, there is nothing to do, and I feel as though this is because Destiny 2 is marketed at the casual audience. These are the people who will most likely do the campaign, maybe wander around for a bit, do a few events, and then move on to the next thing. Yet the small, and I mean small, minority of hardcore players have sunk their teeth into Destiny 2 and are now left wondering, what's there to do at the end? There's a lack of incentive to do anything besides getting your power level up. There's no grind at endgame, nothing to work for. Even cosmetic stuff would be incentive enough for most, but unfortunately, and I hope this won't be the case, if there were to be cosmetic additions that you can only get at level 20, maybe past light level 300, this would most likely become available through the Eververse, which is the microtransaction store within the game, and not something you'd need to grind for. But the biggest issue I feel regarding the endgame would be incentive to do something that will further develop their character. How so? I have no idea. In conclusion, there are so many improvements Destiny 2 has made over Destiny 1. My only real gripe is the fact that it feels a little bit too similar to Destiny 1 in regards to enemy and gun design. But is that what a sequel is supposed to be? Like we mentioned at the start, there's a fine line and you can go either way, too similar or completely different. Also, I found myself looking in awe at the amazing backdrops in the game, the beautiful world design, and now there's actual lore inside the game, none of that grimoire stuff. But as someone who is wanting to learn more about the lore, I would like the grimoire stuff back. Destiny 2 just one-ups its predecessor in almost every way in my opinion. I'm so excited to see what the future holds for Destiny 2. So when pressed with the question, what went wrong with Destiny 2? Only a little. But even if some of the stuff seems a little grindy, I want that grinding experience. That's what type of player I am. Destiny 2 is just a fun video game. It's the first game in a long time where I've stayed up until late in the morning playing it, then I turned it off, and then the first thing I do when I wake up is, I want to play more. To finish this video off, I want to say I don't normally cover other games, but this is the direction I'm most likely going to be taking the channel. We'll still do Dark Souls videos every now and again, but it would be foolish for me to stick with a game that has no future. And you'll see that most likely with a lot of Souls YouTubers as well. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you want to watch other videos in the future and perhaps more Destiny videos, make sure to subscribe to this channel. It would really mean a lot to me. And as always, I've been Paragon. Take care, be good to one another, and have a great day.